Welcome to the Training Stimulus podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Jack Cornthwaite. Jack is a true OG of the UK CrossFit scene. He wears many hats at JST Compete, having been an athlete. He's now COO, coach, and now marketing director as well. So he's seen the UK CrossFit scene from multiple angles and still is very much at the heart of it. In the episode, we talk about the decline of CrossFit as an organization, the rise of other functional fitness competitions, and how he sees the industry evolving in the competitive side of things. And we also talk about lessons he's learned working with elite athletes and being one himself, and coaching at an elite level as well. There's plenty of nuggets in here, and it's a really enjoyable chat for me. I think everyone who's met him will attest to what a great guy Jack is. Just very, very likable and easy to talk to. So hopefully you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed talking through it. But that's enough from me. Let's get into it. Yeah. How you doing, mate?
All right. Yeah, very well, thank you. Busy couple of months. Had a good few competitions like Junior Master I3 Euros, strength and depth, all this sort of stuff. So I feel like, always keeping ourselves busy, that's for sure.
Good. Bit of camping as well recently.
A lot of camping. I feel like whenever people have been trying to reach out to me, I've been like, oh, I'm camping. I'm kind of away at the minute, or it's a lead up to Sid. So camping or sitting or competitioning is it's been the cards, because you're not camping in the winter in the UK, that's for sure.
Camping and competitions, it sounds like a good life to me.
I mean, especially with having the little girls and stuff now, just seeing them, run around, going in the sea, all these things, and not having very much signal, so people can't reach you. It does really kind of hit things home and make you appreciate what does really matter that bit more. So yeah. How about you?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, mostly all good. Paddle this morning in the sun, so that's always a good start to the day.
Were you ranking in the paddle leaderboards over there?
Varies. So one of the this is a long conversation. I don't want to waste too much time on, but basically, depending on which club you play at, they have a different app.
Okay.
So on some of them, I'm doing well. On others, I'm not, and that actually is a problem, because people don't want to play you, because if they lose to a lower ranked player, they lose loads of points. So
okay,
that's that's a long boring story for another time.
Interesting, because there's a few. I think there's a couple of opened in the middle of Manchester now. Yeah. So we've got a couple of friends who do it, but I didn't know about the trying to cheat. Well, they're not cheating the system, but they're playing the system, aren't they?
Problem in the paddle world, but as long as you find 3 good people, then it's a good game. Enough about me and my paddle. We were talking just before we hit record about the various different roles you have. It seems like you've been athlete, coach, business operations, now doing some marketing.
Yeah.
How do you find spinning so many plates, and which role challenges you the most?
All are very, I'd say all are very different, because when I've been doing each role, it's been kind of like a different part of my life as well. So when I was an athlete, I didn't have anything else to worry about. Physically, that was probably obviously the hardest, the hardest time. Mentally, keeping yourself kind of stimulated to some extent, especially I think when you're training individually, that can be quite difficult if you don't have people around you who are doing the same thing, or at least that's what I found. When the years that we went team, like that's when I found those years, and that I felt my performance was actually the best. I felt I was the fittest those years. So for me, kind of being around a team of people has always been really, really important. Moving on to being a coach, again, I think how we've kind of orchestrated it with JST that maybe a lot of other people and brands don't have is, again, that team of coaches around you. Which we've had. I mean, I kind of joined JST in 2014, like a year after Steve and John set it up. Was kind of the first person to join the team as such, doing social media bits and whatnot back then initially, and then starting to do some individual coaching as well. And it, again, because you were doing it with, like I was doing it with Steve, doing it with John, going through the whole process at the same time, it was really exciting. What was challenging was I didn't really, like, before I joined the JST team, my profession was completely different. I'd done a master's in applied marine geoscience, and I was like a geophysicist looking at pipelines and scans of the seafloor and whatnot. So I think, and we'll probably find that this is the theme of most my professional career since being in CrossFit, is you've got to figure things out yourself and take that responsibility to do it. And for some stuff it's easier to do, and for some stuff it's quite difficult to do. So I think with the coaching, again, we were probably one of the trailblazers really with JST Compete in this space. So there was no one, like being an athlete at that point, 10 years ago, there was no one really to coach you and tell you what to do. And same with, coaching CrossFit. There was no one really to kind of guide you and tell you what works and what doesn't work. You had to kind of figure it out yourself, it was quite exciting really, because like you could experiment a little bit more. Like you had the strength and conditioning principles, which we've kind of always used and followed, and still do. But it did give you a bit more flexibility for trying new things and experimenting with new things too. So it's making sure that you kind of you stick with those guiding principles, but you don't get too carried away with continually always trying to do new stuff there. So I think what I'm trying to say there is I think as long as you've got a little bit of someone or something to guide you, like I had Steve to guide me as an athlete, guide me as a coach, like that was great. I've learned a hell of a lot from him, and then the rest of the coaches that have joined the team over the years, which again, if I was an individual coach on my own or anything like that, I wouldn't have had, which I think is one of the reasons why we're still around. We've seen quite a few other brands and companies kind of come and go, but we've managed to kind of stick around all this time, which has been really nice. I kind of guess going from kind of a coach though more into the operations and building the business and running JST. Again, it was kind of a whole new realm again. We've kind of chatted about this before, but you kind of asked like have I had any mentors and that sort of stuff, and for me, I always kind of go to books on that sort of stuff, which I guess can only get you so far, but it seems to have done me well up to this point. So I think it's making sure that you do have a bit of guidance, bit of a mentor, but at the same time, with the ideas and stuff that you've got, you're still experimenting with, doing your own thing at the same time. So
I think books are awesome for that, in that, especially if a book has stood the test of time, you can be sure that the principles in there are kind of timeless principles, and similar to your approach with S&C, that you can rely back on the fundamental principles, and then you can
Yeah.
experiment within and around them, rather than just jumping on the newest trend or method that is getting popularized online.
I think the other thing is as well, again, this kind of relates, this is like a key theme that's kind of always gone through what we've done is, like, we learned stuff ourselves predominantly from being an athlete and doing stuff. Then the same for the coaching. Like, we predominantly learned more stuff ourselves because we had to. And then, you know, again, moving into this operations role, like, my job before I was a coach, like, there's nothing to do with operations, but it had to be done. So you've got to go in and you've got to figure it out yourself. And kind of, you know, touching more on marketing now, like, it's the same thing. You know, I've got a few subscriptions, a few books that I can relate back to, but you've still got to kind of figure out what works for what you're doing and the brand and all that stuff. So, yeah,
Learn
that's
by
kind of like a
doing.
key thing. Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I like it. And go on, mate. You finish your bit.
I was going to say, like, which role challenges me the most. I think coming back to that question, it's probably now. Like, now's the most challenging time, like, kind of running the day-to-day operations, because I'm obviously kind of like, managing a team's one thing, but then, like, you've got all the clients, you've got the coaches, you've got, like, the strategic kind of elements of what we're going to be doing forward. There's like there's a lot more moving parts. Whereas when you're a coach, you can just focus on, like, your athlete a bit more. When you're an athlete, you're just focusing on what you're doing a little bit more. Whereas, like I say, there's a bit more moving parts to things now. So I'd say now is probably the most challenging role I've had so far.
Yeah, I empathize with that as well. I think, yeah, the more different things you try to do, the harder it is to do any of them. Like, if you have one singular focus, then it's not necessarily easy, but it's at least simple. Whereas when you're spinning plates, you can take your eye off the ball and miss something really basic, and then you beat yourself up about it because, yeah, it's basic.
I can't say now how much I appreciate or would appreciate doing less work, so I can then go a bit more all in on it. So I'd say for the people who are like an athlete or a coach now, like, go all in. You know, if you want to be really, really good at that, go all in. I think for me, I've had to kind of go into roles of JST that I've kind of, like, maybe had to more than wanted to, because that's what the brand and, like, the businesses needed, which I'm fine with. You know, I just want to kind of see JST do as well as it can, and I just, like, love hearing all the epic stuff that our athletes and coaches are doing, to be honest. So that's my kind of main motivation, is like how, and we'll probably touch more on this when we talk about BF3 maybe, and those bits and bobs and what we're doing with JST and youth squads. But, like, my idea of kind of, if you can take someone through a lifetime of fitness, no matter what that is to that person, like, that would be epic. So if they came in, you know, at 14, 15 years old, started doing functional fitness, then it's like, right, okay, maybe they do go to the games, maybe they don't. Maybe they continue to do fitness through doing, like, a 9-to-5 job. Oh, I want to niche in on Hyrox. Like, as long as, you know, I want to ideally be at the point where, like, maybe CrossFit's this overarching umbrella, or, you know, functional fitness is this overarching umbrella, but under that you've got all these kind of, like, Hyrox, you know, maybe triathlon, whatever it, you know, whatever is under this kind of umbrella. Like, I think if we're serious, you know, a CrossFit athlete maybe will never be the best at like weightlifting, or, I mean, Tia's proved otherwise, but, you know, whatever kind of is under this umbrella. But as well, for most people, like, CrossFit and functional fitness is just a hobby, and remembering that. So it's kind of like, well, if someone wants to niche in for a year or two and into a certain area, like, I'd love to be able to provide that, and then them come back into doing, you know, CrossFit and being maybe a bit broader again before, oh, I fancy doing this now. Right, I'm going to go into doing a fell run or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, I think taking someone through a lifetime of fitness, in my mind, would be really cool to do.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I think one of the things that you guys do so well is cater to a broad variety of athletes, but also a broad variety of levels, whether they're somebody, a hobbyist all the way through to games athletes. Given you've seen that from behind the scenes, what sort of lessons have you learned from coaching the elites that apply to the intermediates or below, and vice versa? Are there any things you learn from coaching beginners and basics that you can apply to the elites?
I think, especially after doing Sid again last weekend, and again, like more with the juniors at the IF3 Masters and Juniors Euros last month. Everyone, every podcast that you listen to says it, but the top athletes just do the basics really, really well. They don't get too like high or low, worried about what other people are doing, so much. They kind of just focus on what they're doing and what they can control, and they just get on with it. And it sounds silly, but it's as simple as that. And a lot of people, they jump out from training program thinking, oh, I'm like trying to find this magic bullet or whatever. And those who make the most progress and are just the most consistent, like they just stick to the same training program and get on with it. And again, it's like making sure basics are in place, being consistent, getting your head down, not worrying too much about what other people are doing. It's as simple as that. And the difference between, well, one of the main differences between the elite guys and, the guys who were maybe at SID in the RX category is not getting those basics right. Like the nutrition's not on point, or they are worrying about like watching other people in the warm-up area rather than focusing on their own warm-up. Just really, it sounds really simple, but a lot of people actually can't and don't get that right. So that's definitely one of the, for me, those are kind of the big things that jump out. From the last couple of months that just kind of refreshed, kind of the answer to that question. And to be honest as well, I think if you can unlock like an intermediate or an RX levels person's like potential, say like they're reaching the best, like maybe they're qualifying for SID, in the RX category, and maybe they spend like a couple of months leading up to it going all in and they get everything dialed in. I think if you can coach that person to like hit their best, I think in some ways that's more difficult to do than with the elite guys, because they're so switched on and they know what they need to do right and what all the kind of inches are, and it's more kind of like finding new ways to challenge the elites, and it is refining bits and bobs that they might have kind of forgot about, but as soon as you kind of remind them, they can become aware of again. So I think in some respects, if you can get that everyday person, really dialed in and optimized for whatever it is, the A competition during the year, I'd say, in some respects, that's actually harder than coaching an elite athlete sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that, because I guess although the hobbyists or the people who take it less seriously, they've always got to make a decision on how much it's worth to them, like how much sacrifice is it worth, and how do you have that conversation with them to help them decide the balance of like what they are willing to sacrifice to do slightly better in SID RX, for example?
So off the back of what you just said then, so every other Tuesday we kind of get all our coaches together for a bit of a CPD call, and the last couple especially, so this kind of week was kind of chatting about the lead up to competition, what are like the main challenges that you have with athletes, and what solutions can we come up with? And pretty much all the answers came back to communication with the athlete. Have exactly as you said, having that conversation of, we've got to be realistic here with, SID or whatever competition you've got coming up, for the time and effort that you've put in. What do we think, is realistic of what we can attain, and what are our focuses for the weekend? Maybe rather than focusing on the position, it's right, we're going to smash this ring muscle at workout, and we've been working on running. And if we do really well in those two events, because we've been, that's been a main focus throughout the last 6 months, great. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's just sort of contextualizing it regarding their training and their personal circumstance of this would be a good result for you considering your situation, rather than expecting to podium when you're doing 3 times a week and eating out every other day.
It's true. It is. And, I think what we've done particularly well this last probably couple of years, to be fair, people ask me at competition or after a weekend, how did the weekend go? And I never know if they mean results wise, is that what you mean? Or do you just mean the performances of the athletes? And for me, I just kind of always refer back to, from the conversations I've had with our athletes, everyone seems pretty happy with how they've done. So I think we probably do quite a good job of whatever level people are at. We've helped kind of keep them realistic, but also giving the best as well, which is nice. Because again, for most of us, we've got to keep some sort of balance in our lives. We can't be, all eggs in one basket with the elites are. Yeah.
Are there any difficult conversations that you end up having repeatedly with your athletes, or any sort of unpopular opinions that you hold in the fitness industry?
This kind of is a different segue to what we were just on about, but we were chatting a little bit about it before the podcast a little bit more. Is with AI and stuff now, it's hard to know what is real and what is not real. So a lot of people are now trying to show every kind of moment, second, minute of the life, and they're doing really well off the back of it, which is fair enough. But I think I don't believe that you should have to do that to do well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you've got to. I feel like you've got to now, really, but I don't feel like you should. I think, as an example of this, with elite athletes, and with social media and all this sort of stuff, obviously you've got people who just smash social media and they get loads of sponsors and all this sort of stuff. And those elite athletes who are at the pinnacle, whether it's in CrossFit or sprinting, that's probably another good example. They actually don't have that, they don't get that much money, or as much money as what you'd think. There's, I think that thing that Martin Johnson set up for sprinters, I think that's quite a good example of ways in which maybe an athlete doesn't have to show everything, but if they do that competition, there's the opportunity to make more money and stuff, which is quite nice, which I think is actually good with Hyrox and bigger brands like Adidas kind of really kind of look into our space more, to get a bit more sponsorship and being paid for being an athlete now. I think that's will hopefully kind of professionalize a little bit more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the kind of old school attitude was, well, it's a story in Rocky 3, and also the thing it reminds me of is Fergie and Bex, where he just disliked him going down the fame route. And I think that's the traditional attitude of you can't be dedicated to your sport and also invest in personal brand marketing and growing that side of things. And that's kind of the lesson learned in Rocky, isn't it? Like he's out there doing advertising campaigns while Mr. T's just hitting the heavy bag. And I don't know. I feel the same as you. I feel like that's the way it should be. But I don't know if the world has just changed now, where especially sports like sprinting, you kind of need to be, if you're not gonna be the best and you're gonna make your money through pure athletic success, it's almost like a risk mitigation strategy to build a personal brand alongside it.
Is which do you know what? I'm completely fine with that, but I think as long as there's opportunities for the people who just kind of like crack on, can be their best by just focusing on what they're doing.
Yeah,
like all good, and I think those opportunities are coming up more and more. But what I want to make sure is, for the coaches on our team, if their thing isn't like marketing themselves and like showcasing what they're all about, like that's fine. I want them to be able to like focus on them being the best coach that they can, rather than worrying about marketing and all this sort of stuff, so that then they can unlock the potential of their athletes. Because if we're being serious, and this is my opinion, but if someone's at spreading their focuses that bit more, then maybe not, they're not applying themselves to being the best coach and helping athletes as much as they can. So as long as if we can pay those people to be able to do that, like great. So yeah,
that is great. I think there's a lot of coaches who want that and see it as a necessary evil rather than something. You don't get into fitness being like, I really want to manage an Instagram account and I want to grow my social media.
So probably giving you the opposite of what you wanted. That probably wasn't an unpopular opinion. It probably was popular in some ways.
It's unpopular with the people who are doing both, I think. Neither well. That is a good. That's a good answer. I like it. We kind of talked about this in a roundabout way already, but is there anything that, well, without giving away the keys to the kingdom or the secrets, is there anything that a lot of coaches still don't understand about developing athletes at the highest level? Because like from my experience and talking to people about it, I'll give you an example. I think people don't understand the sheer volume that games athletes are putting out on a weekly basis. Is there anything else like that, when you bring a new coach into JST, their eyes are always like, what? This is how you guys do it?
So again, I'm coming back to a book here, but one of the books that has had the biggest effect on me, I read during lockdown, and it was The Winning Mindset by Damien Hughes, who does the High Performance podcast. And it was this idea he put across from British cycling, where the idea of British cycling, when they were kind of at the pinnacle, kind of 2008, 2012, was the athlete is the king or queen, like the crown is on their head. So by that, they mean that the athlete has the responsibility and the ownership of, of everything that they do to some extent. And they can just ask or reach out to whoever they need to help them unlock their potential. So the idea of kind of them taking the ownership means that they feel more empowered. Over the years, we've kind of found out that is the best way to do it. We've tried the hand holding, with some people, and it doesn't work because you end up having to do too much for them. They don't learn, they don't become a smart athlete. They might be a good athlete, might be a very fit athlete, but they're not a smart athlete. And if you're not a smart athlete, you're never going to become the best that you can. So again, for us, like the idea of this kind of putting the crown on the athlete's head a little bit more. Again, we kind of use, we use Circle for our kind of athlete community, where there's lots of resources on there for, if they want to kind of do deep dive on a certain topic, they can go through Circle, find it, and then it's like, right, okay, I know what I need to do now to get better at that. Or if they're still not sure, they can ask one of us. So we kind of provide the guidance and the direction and ask the right questions, and they then still have that responsibility to do it themselves. So I think, and we've learned some hard lessons over the years of again not doing that the right way, and holding athletes' hands a little bit too much. And it's been the most powerful lesson that's reinforced what I've just said as well. So I think a lot of coaches still try and hold their athletes' hands too much, rather than asking them the right questions, and sometimes flicking. Like if they ask you something, it's like, well, what do you think first, before then I kind of guide you in the right direction. So that's what I'd say is the way that we do a lot of things within our community, and how I think our coaches get the most out of our best athletes.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great lesson. I think that it's kind of like empowering, delegating, and sometimes you're just removing the blockers rather than taking the responsibility for their actions. You just show them the way, and then it's kind of on them, which I think just makes more sense than assuming the responsibility that they follow their meal plan, or something fairly basic. That's really cool.
Yeah. And again, it's not to say that I'm doing less. Like, I'm still doing my job of programming, asking the right questions, giving the video analysis, all that sort of stuff. But then again, the opportunity, just that little bit of space gives the opportunity for the athlete to think more, and again, just learn that little bit more as well. And a lesson's always more powerful when you figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say again, our team's quite good at doing that.
That's really cool. And something I've noticed as well is that your coaches are all very proactive in upskilling themselves. How do you structure the guide? Do you have a similar process for them?
In the sense of them learning and
developing
getting
coaches,
better. Pretty much. I think what's really nice with having a team of coaches is that we can bounce off each other. Which again, if I'm a coach, on my own, you don't really have anyone to do that with, unless you kind of maybe in your mentorship group, and you can speak about a certain topic. But what kind of we do with JST Compete, it includes the movement mechanics, so we can chat about that. It includes the competition the other weekend, so we can chat about that. It includes the programming, so we can chat about that. And I think again, when I'm if I'm typing a question to Jamie or Fraser, I kind of already know the answer I'm going to get, but it's sometimes just that confirmation of, right, I am thinking along the right lines here, and they're thinking the same thing. Or if not, they give you another good idea that you can take into consideration, or you can do instead. So I think, with kind of those bi-weekly calls that we have, with having, a kind of Slack group where we can all kind of chat to each other about different topics, it's that's how you learn. I
really like that. There's something you said that really resonated for me, in that sometimes just being told that you're doing it right is really valuable. And that's something that we've noticed in the training stimulus mentorship, is that a lot of people understand things correctly, they'll do a good assessment, they'll make the right diagnosis, and they'll give the right exercise, but they're still just second guessing themselves. So there's that huge amount of value in somebody you respect saying, yeah, I would have done the same. And then it just sort of locks in. It's like, that was a good decision. You pursue it with more confidence and you get a better result than if you did the same thing, but with less confidence. Like if you made a programming decision that you weren't 100% on, it might come through in your coaching that you're not quite bought into it. Whereas if your mate has said, no, that's bang on, like go for it, then actually you coach it with more conviction and the athlete does better as a result, even though the program is exactly the same.
Yeah. Which, so you're exactly right there. And, you know, say Jamie's writing JST athlete and he's, you know, wrote out this cycle. It's then on me. So say we do a test and a retest. It's then on me to sometimes like people just aren't very good at logging benchmarks. But I've got to then dig into the community to find like these stories and these PBs and all this sort of stuff, because I know that's super important, not just for like to find out the stories and to recognize the athletes, but also for Jamie to know that like that is the right thing. So even though we've kind of maybe said, no, that's good, Jamie, it's still important that you have the results and the evidence to back that up too. So like part of my role is like every hat, like community manager as well as like marketer and, you know, operations, is like making sure that we're digging for those stories and getting those results as well, so that we are really backing up programming wise, you know, what we're doing is right and is working. So yeah.
I think that's something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people who are, for want of a better phrase, like high achievers. Like people who tend to do well tend to not dwell on their victories or successes. It's like, oh yeah, I PB'd that, let's move on. And it is an important part of the process, especially I think managing a team, to give them that validation of like, you did a great job here. Make sure you recognize that and build on it.
It really is. So as well, so with how I've kind of, you know, gone through the different roles at JST of like athlete, coach, like did a bit of social media back in the day, marketing, you know, community manager, all these kind of different bits, writing JST athlete and stuff. Like a lot of these roles, like I've then had to kind of pass on to someone else, because it's either been, again, with like writing JST athlete as an example, like we had a period where, you know, Steve kind of left JST, and then David took over JST athlete, and I kind of did the biases, which are based on JST athlete. And then once David had to step back and focus more on being an athlete, like I was writing it for a year or two, and then like, so I'd never been in that position before. I'd always kind of been the side man that had done the biases. So I got the experience of, you know, writing JST athlete. But I think I learned after doing it for a year or so, I was like, there's people who are better at this than what I am, I think. And I'm best being that side man who will kind of support the main person in that role, which Jamie's now stepped into, and I think, you know, he does a much better job than what I did. And it's being humble enough and honest enough with yourself to know that like there's people on your team, you know, and elsewhere who are better than you, and it's fine to accept that. You know, even if it is difficult, you know, and you feel like maybe you're kind of relinquishing some of this control, it's like, no, that is for the best, really. And I think, again, with doing more operations, you know, managing the operations of JST now, like I've had to come to the realization of like going from an athlete and you being in, you know, almost full control of more stuff that you do, to being like, right, well, I've got to trust more people, you know, being in this role now. So yeah.
That's good, mate. Nice. Yeah, I think it's one of those things you hear a lot, but until you feel it, it doesn't really make any sense. That sort of, giving away control and trusting somebody else to do a good enough job. I think a lot of people, especially coming from an athletic background, when it's all on you, then it can give you the heebie-jeebies to
and I think that's why a lot of athletes struggle to move into other roles as well. Really, I think we do some more of our athletes. We do all right with this. So, as an example, like some of our best athletes, like are part of our team. It's like Phil Roy helps with, well, he does the content for JST. Ella's like does some programming for us, some coaching and programming for us. Archie's kind of coming through the ranks, like he does some programming and coaching for us. And I know we mentioned before about like elites having all their eggs in one basket, but I do think that if an athlete does have coaching experience too, they can become a better athlete because they understand the processes and everything much, much better. So I think if you can find a balance of having something else that so say I'm an athlete, an elite athlete now, or someone who's trying to be the best athlete that they can. I know there's some people out there who they've not really got a job. They are trained as a full-time athlete and they're not really doing anything. But I do think for those people, it's like if you were doing some coaching and your purpose of it was to try and like understand movement better, or whatever your purpose is for it, as long as you've got some intent behind this additional thing, as long as if you're using that to serve your main thing, I think that can be quite powerful.
I think there's a lot of situations where that's especially true when it comes to stuff like injuries. Like, just from my personal perspective, you see some athletes where I'm trying to make my mind up on this as I say it, but there's pros and cons of the athlete that just does 100% of what they're told and don't question anything. In some situations, that's brilliant. But then in other situations, that really hamstrings them. And injuries is one of those situations where they can lose confidence or they can lose trust in what they're being told what to do. And because they haven't got any agency and they haven't thought through things for themselves, they then don't know what to believe because they haven't spent the time learning about things. Whereas athletes who are also coaches, David's actually one of them coming to mind, because he has a really deep understanding and he wants to figure it out for himself, he takes way more ownership and can course correct and problem solve on a micro basis on the daily. Whereas somebody who didn't understand the process would be a lot more reliant on external help and will freak out every time there's a bump in the road. So there's pros and cons to both, because I think those people can also be, if you self-diagnose a lot, you can then overthink things and second guess the coaching you're getting or the programming you're getting, which has other drawbacks. But I think, well, my personal preference is I want to understand everything. I want to be fully bought in from an informed point of view, rather than just having blind faith in most situations. But does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. And it comes back to that, king and queen idea of like the crown is on your head. Like the people that reach the top, are the ones that do take that ownership. That again, coming back to British cycling, like they use the analogy: core, commitment, ownership, responsibility, personal excellence. Like those first three things lead you to your own personal excellence. And again, like that's part of what we do with JST and try and get the athletes to do. Like you're committed. That might be on a varying degrees, like how committed you can be, but you're committed. You take your ownership for like your training and what you're doing, and we can give you guidance, and that sort of stuff. But you've then got to take the responsibility for whatever decisions that you make at the end of the day. So,
That's really cool.
It relates back to what we said.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to have to write down that acronym?
I think when they initially, so it was Steve Peters who came up with it with Dave Brailsford, and it was obviously, if you put personal excellence, it was like very close to corpse, so they took the P out and they just made it corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, didn't it? That slide P out there. Speaking of ownership, this is quite a hard segue, but
I know where we're going.
CrossFit, yeah. So
yeah.
I think most people listening to this will have at least a passing interest in CrossFit. Most will have a strong interest. And something we spoke about a few months ago was how CrossFit is waning in popularity. The open registrations are going down. There's a lot of people de-affiliating, and people seem to be becoming a bit disenfranchised with the brand. What's your perspective on that? And if it is true, what do you think is causing that?
I think the issue with CrossFit has been the leadership element, to be honest. And that's just trickled down to everything else. I think that has been, it's pretty much since COVID, with the Greg Glassman and all that sort of stuff. It's just took a tumble, hasn't it? Since then, it's just spiraled. And if it's rotten at the top, as you kind of maybe with, I don't know if you're a football fan, but similar to Man United, the leadership has not been good for a very long time in the Glazers and stuff like that, and it trickles down, and it affects everything else. So I believe that is the main reason for like the decline in CrossFit, and ultimately now it's getting to the point where it's affecting its popularity as well, to be honest. I think it's as simple as that in some ways.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a massive shame. I think, what do you think there's a catalogue of bad decisions that have happened in the last 5 years or so. I think the one that I remember we spoke about a few months ago was changing the qualifying criteria for getting to semis, whereas a lot of people I know who are on that cusp of, they had the goal of making it to semis, and then the rules changed, and now they're like, well, I don't think I've got a shot anymore. Are all of these decisions basically just trying to make the business more profitable? Is that the underlying motivation, or do you think there's a better motive?
I think that those sorts of decisions over the last couple of years have been, in my mind, for financial gain. But again, like, if CrossFit went back to its roots of how it initially grew, I think that would work. How it started. I think they're trying to, with the decline in popularity, they're probably like, what can we do to try and like make a bit more money on, and let's rejig the format of the season again, and we can make a bit more money here. It's like, that's ultimately not solving the problem that you've got. For me, they had this wheel that was just starting to spin faster and faster and faster, and then they've taken a bit out of the wheel, and then it started to kind of get really clunky, and ultimately it's kind of broken down to some extent now. In my mind, back in 2018, before kind of they changed the whole format, like, it wasn't really broke. So what were you trying to fix? Maybe it was the case that they were losing money doing regionals and stuff. I don't know. But if the affiliates and all that side was growing and the format was really working, maybe a slightly longer term perspective, even if you weren't making as much money, would have been better. Who knows? That's the power of hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah. I think you never know what the conversations behind closed doors are like and what they're really prioritizing. But that was kind of how I saw things as well. And then I think the thing they've always struggled with is legitimizing it as a sport. And I remember actually talking to you and Steve about this one day in Wigan,
Wigan.
Yeah, Nando's in Wigan. And talking about I can't remember what the acronym was. That the Functional Fitness Racing Federation? Was that what it was? When you had the standardized events.
Yeah.
And that was the discussion was basically like, how can you legitimize CrossFit as a sport? Do you need to standardize the events? But also, I think the thing that they've really shot themselves in the foot multiple times is making the rules clear. Like the way you qualify for the games has changed so many times in some way, shape, or form over the years. You're just moving the goalposts, and you've got people, training their asses off, trying to get there. And then one year you get whoever's first in their country now jumps the queue when somebody's on the cusp of regionals the whole time, and then they see somebody half as fit as them go to the games, and they're like, "What's going on here? This is what's going on."
But like, what does CrossFit need to become like an official recognized sport? Like, can it? I don't think it can, because it's like Ironman. It's not like triathlon's the recognized sport side of Ironman. And I think Ironman started actually before triathlon became got in the Olympics. Maybe
didn't know that.
That might be utter tosh. So forgive me if it is, but I feel like someone told me that in this last year or two. So again, like for CrossFit, it doesn't need to become a recognized sport, but I think that with the IF3, that's like CrossFit's commercial. The idea of that is to kind of make money, underlying, hopefully, good intentions, get as many people fit and healthy as possible, all that. And I think, it can sit there. And I think what the IF3 doing, the International Functional Fitness Federation, can do is get functional fitness recognized as a sport. And that can sit alongside it, just like Ironman and triathlon. And ultimately that will benefit everyone else, because, gyms can still be a CrossFit gym and be like a BF3 affiliate, like the British kind of National Association for, functional fitness, can be recognised with both, potentially get funding from the government or whoever, like local governing bodies, once it becomes a recognised sport, and, be benefiting from what CrossFit's doing. So for me, they should just sit alongside, and maybe it gets to the stage where for the IF3 and functional fitness racing, that does have more of a standardized format than CrossFit, and that's fine. I think that's fine, because ultimately, if functional fitness is to go into the Olympics, there is going to have to be a standardized format. And I don't know how up to date you are with the BF3 national championships that happened last weekend, but it was in a hyper medley format where all the workouts, apart from the endurance, was done in a 90-minute window. And IF3 have, after chats with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they've kind of said your best chance to get it into the Olympics needs to be in this window. So it's television viewer friendly, I think, is kind of the idea. So again, they're similar and they sit alongside each other. They don't need to be the same, and that's fine. And again, we're probably going to start to chat a bit about Hyrox and stuff in a little bit as too, and that comes into this conversation. I don't think Hyrox ever will be. I might be wrong, but I don't think it ever will be in the Olympics, because again, it's commercial. And again, that's fine. But with this umbrella, for me, Hyrox comes under this functional fitness umbrella. And again, if you want to do that, that's fine. It's just another great way for people to be fit, healthy, whatever, and compete every now and again. That's all good. That just is what it is. And it's killing it.
Yeah, that's definitely it. So for the viewers and listeners who might not be familiar with IF3, could you tell us sort of vision or mission of the federation?
couldn't tell you all the ins and outs, but basically the idea of it is that there's a structured format for IF3, so International Functional Fitness Federation. It's such a mouthful, that events like World Championships. So there's always an endurance event, always a strength event. There's a skill event, a body weight event, a power event, and a mixed modal event. But if you were to look at it, if you were to look at Euros last month, you'd be like, oh, like this CrossFit competition, you wouldn't really know. But you just kind of within each, you make sure that that's tested at every competition pretty much. And again, like the goal of it is to create a sport, and again, like it's already a recognized sport, and I think it was like between 20 to 30 countries in the world at the minute. I think that's the point that we're at. For the UK, the application was meant to go in this summer, but for some reason, I can't remember if it's UK Sport, still hasn't reopened the application to then be able to put it in. So we're having to chat to like ministers and all that sort of stuff. Not my jam. Someone else is doing that. But again, like it's to create sport so that then there can be pathways for performance, but also again, like let's just get as many people fit and healthy as possible. So it does really link in again with all these diehard CrossFit people, linking with what CrossFit is doing. It's just like a different avenue. And again, if you come round to any other sport, whether it be sprinting, rowing, swimming, all the classics, like they're recognised sports, obviously, and they've all got pathways. They've all got, the local clubs, and that's how, a lot of people everywhere in the world have got into sport and all this. So they're basically just trying to make CrossFit or functional fitness a recognised sport. And they kind of just manage the structure of all that, and yeah.
How do you differentiate the sport of fitness from fitness? Because I think, excuse me, the knee-jerk response I can imagine some people saying is, well, why don't people just go to the gym? You can imagine that pushback of, yeah, if you want to play football, you need a football pitch. If you want to sprint, you need an athletics track. But gyms are everywhere. Why can't you just go find the gym?
Well, you can.
Yeah.
But you can still do functional fitness at whatever gym that you want to do. Again, like in my mind, like you have a lot of commercial gyms, they do classes and stuff now. So some PT or coach at that gym could get, again, one of them might already have, a bit of a niche where they do calisthenics or, I don't know, like rowing, whatever. And they're accredited. If you do your BF3 accreditation, you can teach all these kind of functional fitnessy movements in a commercial gym. So you could do a class at a commercial gym, or you can just do your PTs with functional fitness. That's fine. Either way. It doesn't need to be, I think the beauty is like, it doesn't need to be like a CrossFit gym, like a BF3 affiliate. It could just be like a commercial gym that does run classes or, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I get it. I think that's anything that broadens the base of the pyramid and just gets more people doing fitness in some way, shape, or form benefits everybody. Anyone in the fitness industry, and even in the wider world. If you have a fitter population, then the world is going to be a better place. So it gets quite philosophical almost.
And I think as well, this is the beauty of the variety of competitions, and we'll probably come to, the whatever the opposite of beauty is, the ugly side. It's not really the ugly side, but we'll get to that in a sec. The beauty of all these different sorts of competitions, like turf games as well, you can throw that in there, Hyrox, Athex. Like, as an example, me now, like, I don't have time to go to a CrossFit gym. So at the minute, I've just been running and like, squatting, deadlifting, benching, the kind of usual sort of powerlifting stuff. Call it hybrid, whatever you want. But I could probably get away with doing maybe an Athex or something like that. So then I could compete in that if I wanted to. so many people have got different scenarios where they maybe can't do some stuff, but with these different competitions, you still are able to compete, which is nice if you want to, which I think is really, really great. And fitness looks different to different people. Like really, realistically as well, like part of the reason why like I still want to train and, you know, do running and still want to be strong is like we went up to the lakes last month camping, and we were going up like fells and hills and all this sort of stuff with the girls in our backing carriers, and Hannah was doing it too. You know, she kind of does a bit of running, does a bit of lifting, a bit of Pilates, all this sort of stuff. And people are like, "Oh my god, like you managed to carry your kids up this hill?" And it's like, yeah, like we can, because we train, like we do this training to be able to do shit like that, and we do, it's that stuff that we love, like going up hills when it's fucking great day, being able to take the little girls and that sort of stuff. For me, like that's really special to do. And whatever fitness looks like for you and whatever you want it to unlock for you, like bloody great, like just do it. As long as it kind of keeps you in the game, like just get on with it and do it. Don't worry about like the actual, you know, ins and outs of, oh, but I need to do gymnastics. Maybe you can't do gymnastics. Do gymnastics for a year because you've working somewhere for a year on a contract or whatever, and you don't have access to X, Y, Z. It's like, don't worry about that. Just do what you can do, and don't worry about what you can't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the most important side of the equation, and not important to not lose perspective and lose sight of, because I think especially in the competitive and elite performance side of training that we both worked in, like people do find themselves in situations like they have a freak out when they don't have access to a full CrossFit gym, and I haven't got a rope to climb, or you know, the ceiling's too low for me to do my double unders, all this sort of stuff. And yeah, I think that context is really important. But there are still a lot of people who will be listening to this who do really care about the competitive side of things.
Yeah.
And given those changes we talked about earlier with CrossFit and the rise of Hyrox and IF3, BF3, how do you see the competitive scene shifting, because less people are so dead set on CrossFit? You know, when I was working with more athletes, the open was really important in programming for somebody's year, but I think that is only losing importance in people's priority lists for how they're going to create their macro cycle. So I guess the two separate questions here is like, how do you see the competitive scene evolving overall? And then secondly, how are you navigating that at JST? Because it's becoming harder. You know, when you're focusing just on CrossFit, it's quite a relatively simple problem to periodize around. But yeah, I'll let you.
I get what you mean. Yeah, for me, for CrossFit, there needs to be a set format for at least like 5 years in a row before we even consider to be like, right, we're going to focus. Like back in the day, it wasn't even that long ago, you know, everyone tailored the programming around the open or quarterfinals, as you've just said. But I think just last year, off the back of like changing the open every year, the stuff that happened with Lazar as well, we were just like, do you know what? If we take a step back here and look at the whole picture of like the direction that things are going with CrossFit, while still kind of keeping in mind, like most people who are competing in CrossFit, they're doing all these other competitions in the year, and it's probably got to the point now where maybe the open or quarterfinals isn't the main thing that they do want to peak for. So we kind of decided that, right, okay, we're not going to kind of exclusively say that the programming kind of peaks for quarterfinals now. So we still annually periodize JST Athlete to peak around the end of April, because for how we program, the annual structure, we believe, helps with like people's longevity. which is really important. Like, I don't want someone to come in, like, train really hard for a few years and then like just disappear. I'd rather keep someone in, like I said before, for a lifetime and take them through the whole kind of journey of what they're doing in CrossFit, from being, from trying to, maybe like you like Phil Roy and you're trying to, get to semi-finals or the games on a team or whatever it is, to then maybe as like a kid and starts a family and he's just trying to juggle, going to national level competitions or still trying to make semi-finals. And do you know what I mean? I want to help people, longer term. So I believe that, programming annually still kind of helps with that longevity of like it not being intense all year round and you still having these different focuses. So that's what we do there. With how we kind of set things up is we've obviously got our different bias tracks where, if people want to niche in a certain area, like strength, gymnastics, engine, they can focus on, those elements. So JST athletes like the all-rounder. And then you got the compete program, because some people do actually want to do like a competition style program all year round, where there's just more CrossFit workouts and that sort of stuff. But how you, so say for example, Ash, you've got Proving Grounds in Scotland in October, and you want to kind of get ready for that. So say you've been following JST Athlete, you need to work on your strength, you've been following the strength bias. You then switch on to compete, like maybe 8, depending on how all in you want to go, maybe 8 to 12 weeks before Proving Grounds. Right, you switch on to compete. That gets your competition ready. You then follow our 2-week peak program, which kind of tapers you into that. So if you're paying for the JST Athlete subscription, that's how you will prepare for that competition. Mm-hmm. Then we've got our individual coaches who, like, if you want to go more all in and like commit more, or just like have your training organized for you, like an individual coach can do that for you if you want to invest, more money and commit more to that. So again, it's like that sliding scale of where you are and how committed you are and what you want to do. And like you said before, we kind of provide that breadth of that.
That's nice. Yeah, I think that's a really smart way to solve the problem, because it's something I've noticed as well is, the Open and the quarterfinals are just not the pinnacle of people's seasons now, and so many people would rather do well at Turf Games or at SID. So having them peak for the Open, however many weeks it turns out to be next year, it's such a big chunk of time to put yourself towards, especially if you're doing quarterfinals as well. That sort of in between period, it's all time when you're not developing, you're sort of in semi-peak mindset mode, and it's a big chunk of your year.
It is. And again, with that lack of clarity with how the season's going to be and having no idea like how you could qualify, it's kind of like, well, right, let's maybe worry less about quarterfinals and all that sort of stuff. Let's do in-person competitions, get the experience. Hopefully, maybe CrossFit will sort the shit out, and you kind of, hopefully they have a bit of continuity with what they do for a couple of years. Maybe it'll come back round to it. Maybe it will kind of peak for that. Or maybe what could happen is the BF3 decides to put on like a similar thing to the Open, where you can qualify for national championships off the qualifiers. Maybe then that becomes the main thing if we're UK based, that we then focus the programming around. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows? It depends where the BF3 goes. Like, how quick does it become a recognised sport? How much of a following does it gain? How many of our athletes are doing that as well? What do we believe is the best thing? I think for me with the BF3, and if we did go down that route, I kind of like the idea that we'll be like, because we are UK based, we can help a lot of people through that in person as well, which is quite nice. But again, if we've got athletes abroad, it's kind of a little different. So it's like there's all these moving parts to it. So, but again, if BF3 does become recognised and functional fitness becomes a recognised sport, I feel like I'd like to think we would have more control over the direction of how things would go. Whereas with CrossFit, I don't feel like there's the opportunity as much with that. or at least the last couple of years anyway.
Yeah.
So
it does feel like the reputation, I'm reluctant to say it, but is like irreparably damaged in that so much shit has happened in the last few years that even if they pull together a perfect plan, so many people have now disengaged, and there is room for a competitor brand to swoop in, start afresh, and just do it better. And I think Hyrox isn't a like for like, but they've hoovered up all this unmet demand for people to compete in a known format. The workout's exactly the same every time. It is actually very accessible. So there's obviously CrossFit was pretending that it was that for a long time, and then Hyrox proved
I get what you mean.
And I think even for the CrossFit Games, you see the big competitions around the world doing a really good job of getting the big athletes there, running it well, putting better coverage on. So, is there a reality where one of these big brands just starts their own CrossFit like competitive landscape and say, right, we're going to have an annual cycle, we're going to have the non-CrossFit Games, and I don't know.
Would you not argue that World Fitness Project is trying to do that?
Yeah.
But for me, with how I perceive that, because obviously Ella and Jen have kind of qualified for the first tour and this next tour, I just purely see that as elite. So for me, how this kind of looks like it's playing out is a bit like golf. There's the PGA, isn't there? And then what's the other Live? There's Live.
Yeah.
I kind of see it as like, right, well, we've got CrossFit and now we've got World Fitness Project. They're kind of just two different the CrossFit Games and WFP. For me, it's just two separate things that are the same thing pretty much.
Yeah.
In my mind anyway. I know they've kind of done workouts for like open style where anyone can do it and stuff, but it's not really got that much traction. It's my perspective. I don't know if you kind of see that differently.
No, you're right. Yeah, it doesn't seem to have that much traction yet. What would it take to bring back an open? You know what I mean? When you got hundreds of thousands of people around the world all buzzed for the weekend and to do the open workouts together, could another brand reasonably create that same thing?
I don't know if it could. That's why I think either CrossFit should just go back to how it was back in the day, doing open regionals games, or again with like national governing bodies of functional fitness. Like, does that just become a bit more of a deal for each country? And I know it's not like on a global scale, but again, when I was sailing, for example, like it's more tangible when you're going against people within your country. So with it being a bit more tangible, will more people get invested in that? I don't know. Do people like the idea of going against everyone in the world? I don't know. I don't know what the answers are.
I think they do. I think that's, it's the classic CrossFit nose to put in their open score as quickly as possible to say that they're 17th in the world because only 18 people have done it. Like, I think that's a human instinct to want to see where you rank globally if you do something like that. I think that's one of the cool things about CrossFit, right? Is that the workout's standardized, so you could see where you scored in the whole wide world.
I was so at the weekend, Phil Roy won the BF3 National Championships, and Kelly Griffiths, one of our athletes, won the female side. So I put in our coaches group, I said, because they've won this national championships, does that mean that they can call themselves the fittest in the UK? And Mitch kind of came back and said, probably not at this point. But I'm kind of like, well, if you wanted to ruffle some feathers, could you actually say that though? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. It's like boxing, so many different belts, the same weight classes.
It's it's straight. It is strange. It is strange. Because what have CrossFit trademarked? Forging Elite Fitness they've got, but when they say like someone's fittest in the UK, is that a trademark thing? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I don't think
So
they
I was a
can.
bit like, well,
They can't own fitness. They can't
yeah,
say,
that's
yeah, we get to decide who's fittest.
so. Yeah, I mean, like I say, if BF3 want to ruffle some feathers, I've kind of said, is that something we can say? And
Yeah.
one of the struggles of like getting the BF3 going again and all this sort of stuff, because there was 2018 when the World Championships was in the UK and we had loads of athletes do it, and then COVID happened and it kind of fizzled off. So it's been the participation for the juniors and the masters has been pretty good, but for the individuals, it's not been so good, or it's been hard to pull in the big names because obviously there's not really like that same money or kind of attention you would get off the back of it right now. But for me, and I think this is what we've kind of realized this last year is it's like, right, well, if if your top guys and girls like your Harry Lightfoots, your Amy Kringles, your Ellas, your Jens don't want to do like nationals and stuff, the BF3 stuff, like that's fine. Because in 5 years, when all these junior and youth athletes that are coming through and they've been doing it since they're 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever it is, and they continue to do it and they can see that, right, well, if I win nationals or I come on the podium, I get to go to Europeans, then I get to go to the Worlds, just like you would in any other sport. Like, it's going to become a big deal. It's only going to be a matter of time. So it's just having that bit more of a longer term perspective of like, right, well, we've tried to entice, the big names in the UK to do nationals by saying like, there's a £2,000 prize pot here for 90 minutes of work, and they still don't want to do it. So it's like, well, right, okay, like what more can you do there really at the minute? Probably not that much. So
Yeah.
let's focus on the longer term picture and just stick with it.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I think, well, Live was just pure money, but that's how they managed to get competitive. Is Middle Eastern money. They just paid hundreds of millions out to get the most attractive players to the audience.
Which is like WFP.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's one playbook, but I think I hadn't considered that perspective of the long play of it's kind of, if you play a relatively minor sport, one of the big draws is you can go to Commonwealth, you can go to the Olympics and represent your country. And if that operates in parallel, that is still a big draw. There's a lot of people who do it literally for the love of the game. They just love competing in that sport and want to do it in an internationally recognized way. And maybe it is like boxing, where you go as far as you can as amateur and then you switch to professional at some point, if you want to go make money.
Yeah, I don't. That's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out, really, because with it being like a new sport, is it the case that with like athletics and stuff, there's a bit more of like this traditional old school mindset? Like, is there a way BF3 can have like more commercial elements helping it to help entice people in? I don't know the answers right now, but it would be cool to see it be more of a modern sport, because let's be serious, like with CrossFit and everything, if you don't post your PB on Instagram, you didn't do it right. You know what I mean? It's kind of come through this social media kind of era of like showcasing what you do and all this sort of stuff. So maybe it's the case where, can there be commercial elements that help it with that too? I don't know. I don't know the answers for that right now. But kind of coming back to the thing like you said about Live, and like most people who are involved in BF3 don't have enough money to kind of just pump loads of money into stuff to make that sort of thing happen. Plus, also, it wouldn't become a recognised sport if you did that. But for me, like, if I was to ask you, Ash, if you could go to like SID UK champs and like come podium and you conferred at the CrossFit SID UK champs, or you could go to the BF3 National Championships, you could become national champion. You could then go to Euros, so you've got the potential to be European champion or compete at Europeans, and then you could go to Worlds and become a world champion. For me, like, as like a bit of an ego thing and a prestige thing and all this sort of stuff, I would say the Worlds, European, all those things would be much more appealing than just doing SID UK champs. Now, I know a lot of people might not be able to kind of do that or kind of qualify for those things. But
yeah,
do you know what I mean?
We think, talking about a modern take on sport, one of the things that you just triggered in my mind that Hyrox does really well is the media side of things. I remember thinking from the very start, the fact that they have loads of professional photographers there, so everyone gets their sled drag photo where they look jacked and makes it their profile picture. It's, if you play that game well and you bomb social media with making everyone look as fit and sexy as possible, then they do the marketing for you, and that becomes more, you get more social credits for being associated with that than potentially SID.
I guess you either need someone who is then really good at marketing and creating content that's super invested in functional fitness and the sport, because otherwise, like, no one's doing it for commercial gain, are they? For their own financial gain as such with the sports side of things. So I guess that's why, again, like when we come to sprinting and athletics and other things, like, it maybe doesn't get as much hype as what maybe you get what I mean, don't you?
Yeah, totally.
It's interesting. It is interesting. It is. We're in a different. It's just a different time now, isn't it? Like, all about YouTube, showing what you do, like content, making things look sexy.
Yeah.
You've got to do it if you want to thrive. So yeah.
On that note, there's a, have you heard of Bryson DeChambeau? He's a golfer. He hits it an absolute mile. He's famous for massive drives, and he's a big YouTuber. And a lot of people would have said the same about him, that he's not taking the sport seriously. He's distracted. He's growing his personal brand. He's doing all this stuff, and he's played better since. Like, he still performs at the highest level, and I think that's one of the examples I have in my mind of, he's not going to be the new Tiger Woods, but he is performing at the highest level whilst running the thing in parallel. Maybe it's his personality type that allows him to do it, and a lot of his content is obviously him playing golf and him practicing. And I think he's just one of those people who doesn't really feel like he needs to put on an act when he's in front of the camera. He can just fully be himself, express his emotions as he hits a bad shot or whatever, and doesn't really feel too much about it. But I think those sorts of people are going to do, like, he might do a lot better in his career than a better golfer than him, because his business, and he probably has a retirement pathway as well. So maybe that's the way it's going to go in functional fitness as well, that it's just parallel running.
Yeah. I think my other big motivating factor for getting involved with the BF3 as well is that, like, again, my sport when I was younger was sailing. So with sailing, like, you could qualify for a regional squad and then a national squad, and then you could compete internationally and do all these things. And the times that I had and the experiences I had doing all these things, so going on training camps, going away to different countries, doing, world championships and driving there and all that sort of stuff, and hanging out with your friends and doing a sport that you love while hanging out with your mates. To recreate that for functional fitness, I think in my mind is just really fucking cool, because I'm providing opportunities for all these people who, maybe doing functional fitness, and I'm providing them a pathway for if they want to kind of reach, the top level, or, if they just want to be, like we said before, like sliding scale, if you just want to like get a good job, do like functional fitness or CrossFit, Hyrox, while you're kind of doing these other things, like fill your boots, it's there for you. But to try and provide these experiences for people, for me, because I had them and it was really powerful for me, is quite inspiring, really, and quite motivating.
Definitely it's inspiring just hearing you talk about it. And one of the last things I wanted to ask on the topic of inspiration is, like, for both competitive athletes and competitive coaches, what, considering the breadth of stuff we've discussed today, there's so much to think about, but if you were to distill it down into some simple advice, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are in those categories listening. So for the athletes and for the coaches, what would be a simple piece of advice that you could deliver?
So I'm just going to go. I'm going to go two. Sorry about this.
Cool.
For me, that be your own king or queen. So whatever it is you are going to go all in and do, first make sure you love it, and then be the king or queen of that. So what I mean by that is, like we said before, like take the ownership and responsibility to do it. So the passion, the love for it's going to help you be committed, but then you've got to then take the ownership and responsibility. So if you really want to be good at something, what can you do? Like, it's all in your control. What can you do to make yourself better? So I kind of distilled that into one.
Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah, that applies for both, really, doesn't it? Like for athletes and coaches, take ownership of your career and just
crushed it.
Cool. And then last one today, mate. If you could wave a magic wand and change the fitness industry, how would you change it?
I think I would just love to see like CrossFit have like a serious kind of go back to its roots and how it used to be, and have all that set up, and then like have functional fitness recognized already. And then I think it'd be just great to see all these different things just flourish. Because we chatted before we jumped on here about AI and all these sorts of things, and like, are people just going to be sat behind the laptops and the phones just watching stuff more and just being unhealthy and just, sedentary? Like, let's get people off the seats and out there and just doing stuff that they love. And, so I think those are two big things that would help with it all. And if other forms of fitness racing formats come up, like, great, if people want to do that, let's just embrace it and just crack on. With what we do with CrossFit and functional fitness, for me, it's the umbrella of everything. Like, you can dive into whatever you want to. So yeah, embrace it.
Nice. It's a lovely way to wrap things up. Thank you so much for your time. That was an awesome chat. I think people get a lot of valuable insights from it, and hopefully a couple of laughs. Where can people find out more about you and JST? Give us all your plugs and links.
If you want to follow me and my camping experiences and some coaching experiences, Instagram, it's at Jack Cornthwaite without a C, JK. For JST compete stuff, again, Instagram's the main bit where we kind of share everything. So JST_compete and we've got a website too. But if you drop us a message on Instagram, it's usually myself or like Peter Philroy that messages them back. So yeah, you'll probably be chatting to one of us. But yeah, just reach out if you think we can help you or you're not sure if we can help you. Like, just ask. We can see what we can do. So simple as that. All right. Oh, good. Thank you.
And there we have it. Another great guest on the Training Stimulus podcast. Hope you guys took a ton of value from it. I certainly did. And if you have any questions for Jack, his contact details will be in the description below. And we'd love to hear what you thought of the episode in the comments. Similarly, if you have any recommendations or requests for guests to get on the Training Stimulus podcast, please drop it in the comments or drop us a DM. Our contact details are also in the description below. But that is it for this week, guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.